Lately, I have been talking about rabbits a lot, and I know that. I've talked about different recipes that I use, how we butcher, what we're using the pelts for, how to process those pelts, why I like rabbits so much in the sense that they are just very self-sustaining. They're really easy to grow their feed for, even if you are somewhere like Montana where it is super cold and snowy a lot of the time. It's really hard to grow things here. I'm very bad with my garden. Anyway, that's a whole other tangent. But rabbits are just a good option for you to grow, and they're even sustainable enough that you can grow their feed right there on your own homestead, either through grains or through just foraging, going out and finding grasses, herbs, weeds. There's a lot of alfalfa that grows here that we give to them, things like that. And I talk about them a lot on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, where you just see like a really short video, and I don't have the opportunity to really explain what's going on, and there's just like a lot of chaos going on in the comments. So I want to use this video to briefly talk about rabbit starvation, protein poisoning, you know, that whole thing. I just want to dispel the myths on that and make sure that you are not fearful of raising rabbits or thinking that they are dangerous, poisonous, they're going to starve you to death, things like that. I want to make sure you feel really comfortable about the rabbit and have an informed opinion on rabbits for meat. First of all, we'll talk about the bad first. Yes, people have starved, I guess, to death on rabbit in the past. That was in very specific circumstances, and I want to talk about that and why that is not something you need to worry about in any capacity as a homesteader, as a farmer, as someone who is just raising rabbits in your backyard, okay? I do not know a ton about human nutrition, but I know a lot on the animals. That has kind of been my hyperfixation for the past few years, is figuring out everything I can with their diets and the best way to go about meeting those needs in the most economical, sustainable way. So a lot of that does transfer over to people, and I know that people and animals need fat to process the vitamins and minerals and to do a lot of the functions of the body. Like, there's just a lot of things that you need fats for to function as a person, and if you don't have those fats, then those functions will eventually fail and you'll feel very sick and then eventually pass away if you do not have fat in some form or another. I'm in America, in Montana, on Kootenai and Salish land right now. And you know what? Native Americans did not starve to death on rabbit. They ate a lot of rabbit. It was part of their diet, a good part of their diet, especially for this area. But they did not starve to death because they ate a varied diet, and they were not picky eaters when it came to that animal carcass. They did not just eat the meat and then move on. They ate the fat, they ate the organs, may or may not have eaten the brain, I'm not sure. There is like a prion disease thing you have to worry about. But they were not picky about it, so they were fine. Trappers and early colonizers in this area did have to worry about rabbit starvation, and that is because when they got a rabbit, they would butcher that animal and they would eat the meat, and they would not touch any of the fat. They wouldn't touch any of the organs. They didn't do anything with the brain. And they weren't eating any of the vegetation that animal had lived off of. Rabbits need fat to live as well. Like, everyone needs fat in some capacity or another, and they were getting it through their plants. And you know, the settlers just were not doing anything to supplement their fat through either other parts of the rabbit's body or by eating some of the vegetation that rabbit was also eating. I'm not saying that rabbit starvation isn't real, because it is a real thing. But if that happens to you in modern times, you're kind of a dumbass. So it's not going to happen to you as a homesteader, as someone who is informed and educated and is not going to be disrespectful and discarding parts of that rabbit. You're going to eat every part of that animal. On every single one of my butcher days, you can ask anyone. At the end of that day, I always take the liver and I fry the liver with some onions, and that is what I have for dinner that night. I will say though, I don't enjoy the kidneys. I don't enjoy the heart. There are other body parts you can eat as well, organs you can eat as well. If you don't like it, put it in some sort of a freezer container, put it in your freezer. When you go to grind your own meat, you can take that stuff back out of the freezer and then mix it into your hamburger, and you will never taste it. You will never know it's there. It's a good way for you to use all of the animal and not discard it and not have to taste it if that is an issue for you. As a side note, I just had a conversation about someone who was butchering animals for the first time, butchering rabbits for the first time, and they were eating liver, and they said it was absolutely foul. And they didn't know that they needed to remove the gallbladder. I'll show you a picture of what the gallbladder is. You need to take that off of the liver and make sure you do not puncture it, because if it punctures and it gets any juice on that liver, it's going to be really gross. So I just want to make sure you know that and you don't make that mistake yourself, so that way you don't ruin liver for yourself. I have been doing some record keeping, but I do need to improve that because there's just a lot of stuff that is so connected and is so interesting to pull those pieces of data together and look at it. But I have just processed 19 rabbits. I just processed 19 rabbits, and I think the smallest one was 3 pounds and the largest one was like 6.5, maybe 6 3/4 pounds. And I don't remember, I'm sorry, I do not remember how much fat there was on each individual one, but I took 2 of my larger rabbits and I pulled the fat from their body cavity and I put that on my kitchen scale, and it was 40 grams of fat for 2 rabbits. Now, if I remember correctly, the average human body needs a minimum of 40 grams of fat daily to function correctly. And that came from just 2 rabbits in the fat in the abdominal cavity. I don't know if I said that right. I'm not even going to go look. But around the organs, there was, there's fat, just pure fat sitting there. And I know that I got about 20 grams per rabbit from that. So half of your daily values is just there. That does not include what is in the meat. There is fat in the meat. I know people say there isn't. There is small amounts. It's not a lot, but there is some there. And there's quite a bit in the organs. And there's also some in the bones, like if you make a bone broth. So 2 rabbits for sure is going to hit your fat. So if you are in a survival situation, which somehow entails you just having rabbits on your homestead and enough feed for your rabbits to like survive, but you've only got the rabbits for you to eat, I don't know when you would ever be in that situation. But if you were, make sure you eat the fat and make sure you eat the organs and turn those bones into bone broth. You're going to be fine. But on top of that, like if you're in that survival situation, you have to eat just the rabbit meat, none of the organs, none of the fat. No sides, like you're not eating this with anything from your garden, you're not eating this with eggs from your chicken, you were literally just eating rabbit meat for like 6 weeks at a time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or like it might be your only meal, but you know what I mean, like that is your only meal for like 6 weeks before you're gonna have any side effects or any signs of rabbit starvation. We know that most studies are conducted on men. They're like, men are just the standard for pretty much all testing. And I do know that women need more fat than men do, so women might hit that mark faster than men. I'm going to assume that 6 weeks is for men. Probably a little sooner than that for women, but I wouldn't enjoy a full week of just eating plain rabbit meat with no butter, no spices, no olive oil, like literally just plain rabbit meat. No thank you. A ton of my recipe videos where I'm talking about stews and soups and fried rabbit and just like all the good things that you can make with rabbit, of people saying that you're gonna starve to death on that, and that is just simply not true. Rabbits are higher in protein, they are lower in calories, they are lower in fat. That is not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're in the camp of trying to reduce your body fat overall. So it's really not a bad thing. It is no different than eating your grilled chicken or eating your protein shakes or whatever those things are that you're doing to get your protein up, get your calories down, move more, be more active, be healthy. I think it boils down to the fact that most people were only halfway paying attention when they talked about rabbit starvation in school. But the truth is that you can suffer from the same thing, that rabbit starvation or protein poisoning, from deer, elk. If you have like a grass-fed cow and you're not eating any of the fat and you're not eating it with anything else, technically the same thing could happen there. Same thing with chickens. People just associate it with rabbits, which is silly, and I want to dispel that myth. In my opinion, I think people are way more at risk of using protein powder as a meal replacement and getting protein poisoning than they are from eating excessive amounts of rabbit and then getting that protein poisoning. Also, rabbits are a good source of many vitamins and minerals, and it's important to know that domestic rabbits tend to have a higher percentage of fat than wild ones. That's because they have a much more relaxing lifestyle. They're not scared and running around, so they tend to have more favorable nutritional profiles. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those, and I will see you next Monday. Bye!